Mr. Lewison.
So this bill sets standards, mandate licenses, and amends processes related to EV charging. It enables Singapore to scale up the provisions of EV charging in a reliable, accelerated way. I wholeheartedly endorse this. I thank the Ministry for holding a public consultation as well and engaging affected industries in preparation for this bill. I have 3 points of clarification. My first clarification is on Clause 97, which amends the Building Maintenance and Strata Management Act. The amendment allows MCSTs to install and regulate EV charging by passing a motion with more than 50% of the votes. This will be a sharp drop from the current threshold of 90%. It is welcome news for many condominium owners whose management have not been able to install charging points because a small minority of residents object. It is also welcome news for Singapore's Green Plan. More charging points at home means more drivers making the leap from gas cars to electric cars. It will help us reach our net zero emissions target. But I'm concerned that the lowered voting threshold is limited. It applies only when the motion doesn't propose spending from the MCST's management or sinking funds. Can the Minister explain the intent for this carve-out? The management and sinking funds of MCSTs are meant precisely for the installation and maintenance of common property, such as charging points. How else should MCST fund charging points? Is the idea for operators of charging points to bear all costs and for residents to pay the operator out of pocket? This is not how charging points are funded at most condos around the world, so any clarification on intent and implementation will be helpful. My second clarification is on Part 8, which mandates the installation of charging points during major construction works. Let me first applaud the Ministry for increasing its requirement in response to energetic feedback from the public consultation. The standard for approved electrical load increased from 15% of parking lots to 20%. The standard for the number of charging points increased from 1% of parking lots to 4%. So my concern is not about standards. Instead, it is about coverage. The amendment fails to cover redevelopment where the gross floor area increased by less than 50%. Can ministers share how many building projects from 2018 to 2020 increased the GFA by between 25 and 50%, and how many increased the GFA by between 10 and 25%? The amendment also fails to cover redevelopment where the new approved electrical load capacity is less than 280 kilowatt ampere. Can ministers share how many building projects between 2018 to 2020 led to a new approved electrical load of between 150 to 280 kilowatt ampere? I worry that we have set reasonable standards but applied them to too few building projects. Indeed, it will be unsurprising if redevelopments in the coming years are designed to dodge our threshold for the charging point standards. I hope not. My suggestion is we should impose standards even on smaller scale redevelopment. These standards may be lower, but they must exist. This will ensure a more steady growth in our charging points provision. Will the Ministry consider this suggestion? My third and final clarification is not about what's in the bill, but what's missing from it. Several key ingredients for increasing the provision of charging points are not in the bill today. First, let's talk about subsidies. Can the government share how many charging points have been supported by the co-funding from the EV Common Charger Grant? Are we on track to co-fund a grant maximum of 2,000 charging points by end 2023? Installing charging points is expensive. If the grant remains underutilized, there might be scope to increase the quantum of the grant or to expand the number of co-funded charging points per resident. Second, let's talk about curbside charging. Does the Ministry plan to install charging points on the curb or residential streets and public roads? Street parking is the norm for many Singaporeans in both residential and commercial areas. For some, it is the only place they can park. We should ensure there are options for curbside charging as well. In the US city of Seattle, the city government is installing curbside charging points free of charge if the applicant's home does not have its own parking facilities. We should have our own program based on a framework that balances costs, accessibility, and any other considerations. So notwithstanding these clarifications, I stand in support of the bill.